Hello and welcome everyone to our session 102 from Hello Casa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Sam Menda from Seed Real Estate in Lisbon, Portugal. Sam, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Sam has been working in the film and advertisement industry for over 17 years. Afterwards, he chose to go for the venture of real estate and started his own real estate company in Lisbon with his friend Eden. Sam is also originally Israeli, Portuguese, and even has another inheritance from a different country, which he will say afterwards. His entire real estate approach is very digital. It has a totally digital DNA in itself, which he also says is important to really get more market share and be overly competitive in a very highly competitive market in Lisbon. Sam will talk about it during this session. I'm super excited to have you, Sam. Welcome to the show once again. It's also very interesting for me to have the first live session. So thank you so much for hosting me and have this one here. I'm really looking forward to it. And the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
First of all, nice to meet you, Michael. It's a pleasure for us to host you in our office. The missing country was Turkey. I think I'm mostly Turkish, and then Israeli, and then Portuguese. I have all these three nationalities, but I identify myself more as Turkish since I was born and raised there. And then I moved to Israel. And for the past 4.5 years, I've been living in Portugal as a Portuguese citizen.
Perfect. Film advertisement, serving one of the biggest brands in the world, and then real estate. Give me a bit of an overview how this journey happened, and maybe also an intersection between these two elements.
Until I started the Seed journey, all my life, since I was a kid, I was a big film buff. And in Turkey, how it works is when you study for the university, you have to pick a major. And since I was a small kid, I was sure that I was going to study film and I was going to be a director. So that was my only goal that I studied. Then I won the best film university in Turkey. I studied there. And while I was studying, I started to work as a AD, assistant director, and went into the filmmaking market. And then I became the third AD, second AD, first AD. And eventually, around 10 years ago, I became a director. And I was shooting TV commercials. I shot commercials for Adidas, Samsung, Gazprom, and many projects for many countries. And when I moved to Portugal, I was still a director. It was in the beginning of pandemic. Actually, maybe the middle of pandemic, actually. I was working for a Brazilian company who has opened their first branch in Portugal. So they were just going into this journey and they hired me as an in-house director, which is actually not very common because usually the commercial directors are freelancers. So you just work project by project. And for me, it was a big relief in this new country. So I don't need to travel anymore. If I work or not, they're going to pay me amazing. So we started like this. I was waiting for the projects. We were giving budgets for projects. And then the pandemic hit. So the deal is, if I work or not, they are supposed to pay me at least for 6 projects per year. So they, first month, second month, third month, fourth month, they were paying. And I was like super comfortable. Like everybody was having a really hard time in the beginning of pandemic. And I was just, okay. But then I realized it's not going to be sustainable. And what happens is after 5th month, they actually called and said that like, we just cannot. And they had to close their Portugal branch. And of course I said, of course, that's totally understandable. And back then I was still thinking it was going to be a bit better, which didn't. And in the meantime, since I was still getting paid, I was just so bored because there's nothing to do. I wanted to film. I even filmed some little commercial just for myself at home. It became very viral, actually. It was a vodka tonic commercial with my own recipe. And then my best friend, Eden, he was already working with a real estate company in Lisbon. And he said, you know what, since the pandemic started, we are just working online for a couple of hours per day. You are bored. Why don't you join? You are good with people. I think you can make maybe some sales and it's extra money. I said, yeah, why not? I'm super bored anyway. Very soon we became partners inside the company. I got the marketing part and he got the sales part, which actually we now follow through in Seed as well. And even though it was the pandemic, both of us made a lot of sales in our first year without speaking Portuguese. And after that, we realized the gap in the market. And we said, okay, we can do much more. So we know what is it. And my partner, he's French-Israeli. So he's also very hot-blooded, hard worker, very good with sales and very good with people. But something is missing. In real estate, there is a lot of back office part that you need to do a lot of stuff, CRM, contracts, upload this, write that. And it takes actually maybe 80% of your time. And without even Portuguese speaking ability, we managed to close all these deals. So we actually said, you know what? Let's hire an assistant. We will pay for it. We are not asking the company. Yeah? But of course, the mentality is, no, let's not change the system. So let's keep the system. And we just couldn't comprehend this. It's like, because if we win more money, they will win more money as well. But they were opposed to that. And that was the time, okay, we need to open our company now. And that was the time. We were at the beach, actually. We were already thinking about opening the company. We didn't know the marketing part, that part. I am in the marketing world, but I'm not actually in the marketing advertising part. I'm on the shooting part of the marketing that I need to study. So we were talking about, okay, but how are we going to do the lead generation? And we were just, everything is ready. We have our mindset, we have our structure, and we were going to focus on the lead generation. How are we going to do it? We can do this, we can do that. We were talking at the beach, and then just a guy just sitting next to each other. I'm so sorry. I just overheard what you were saying. And you know what I do is lead generation for real estate companies. And we eventually didn't actually start to work with this guy, but it was just a sign. Okay. Yeah. And we just had a conversation and we learned it is actually quite easy because the hard part is not the lead generation. The hard part is once you get the lead, the service you give to them. And that part we covered already. And after this realization, we immediately opened our office. It was not very small actually, but it was an apartment. It was an apartment near El Corte Inglés, São Sebastião. So we started like this. We hired our first assistant to actually help us with the administrative part, the Portuguese part, the phone calls that sometimes people don't speak Portuguese, of course, very understandable. And then we started to present our vision about the company, about the real estate world, how things can go. And very soon we started to hire more people and more brokers. And in 2 years now we are in this huge office with 18 people, 13 different nationalities. Wow. And what I like to proudly say that it is like a family because one of the biggest part in the hiring process, we always had 2 steps. One is the very professional interview, the background check, what do you do, what is your experience and stuff. And the second part, even before this interview, you actually said that real estate is a people business. So it's very important how the people are in their real life. So the second part is just a social environment and just talk, chat, meet our friends, and have a conversation. And the idea is, this is a long-term project. This is a lifetime project. And we don't want to just work. So we want to hire people that we are going to spend the rest of our lives with these people. So it was a very specific elimination process that helped us to become a real team and grow as much as we did in the last 2 years.
Perfect. I loved your journey. I love the way you described it, and it makes everything total sense. technically speaking, opening up your own branch or your own company, Eden was already having a real estate license himself, under which all the rest can work. How does that work in Portugal? Because we're talking to an international audience. Does everyone have to then also obtain a real estate license? How does that technically work for someone who might want to open their own company in Lisbon when they're interested to really like make the leap?
Yeah, at the beginning of the company, we had to obtain a specific license, which is called AMI license. Without this license, you cannot do actual real estate mediation. So we, of course, applied for this license as soon as we started this journey.
And then you need one license for the entire company?
Yeah, but just one license for the company is enough. Then all the other real estate consultants can work under this license.
Makes total sense. Okay, got it. Next technical question. You said, okay, getting the leads is actually not the biggest thing, but really like delivering and following through with the clients. How does the inventory generation work for you? Or was that, because I talk to many real estate agents, many also say like, honestly, the most important thing is actually like captando, like obtaining basically the real estate, maybe even sometimes exclusivity. First of all, how do you see that challenge? Is that a challenge in Lisbon and in Portugal, or is it something which is not such a big issue because you don't have that part of exclusivity as much as in different countries?
That is a challenge for sure, and that we try to overcome in the first year. In the first year, we have experienced that as well. So the first year was more buyer focused, but we very fast realized that this is the easy job, and the big money and the big real estate service is actually for the sellers.
Okay.
So because what we are selling is the product, is the real estate itself. So we need that to sell. And then that is why it's very easy to generate leads. When you have the products, you will be generating leads, buyer leads for that. Of course, after that, it's very important how good you deal with the buyers. And the other thing is, for example, in Turkey and in Israel as well, the real estate companies get their commissions, half of them from the buyers and half from the sellers. In Portugal, the real estate companies get all their commissions from the seller.
When do you have the negotiation power to say, okay, I want to have exclusivity on it, and I want to have exclusivity on the listing for 6 months because I'm going to invest into marketing, staging, leaflets, whatever it is? Or is that rather a benchmark or a threshold for the value of the respective property?
We actually try to get away from the word exclusivity.
Okay.
We have two kinds of services. This is how we present. We have the standard services, which includes this, and we have the premium service, which includes exclusivity as well. But with this, they are going to have much more benefits. And then it's the seller to decide. And most of the time, when you present these services and these extras, they tend to go to exclusivity. And one of the difference that we make, we are very honest, and also we are not scared about our services and the quality of our services. So actually, as an addendum to the contract, we actually say, if we don't deliver any of these promises that we make, you can cancel the contract.
Got it.
Because most of the time, they just got stuck with exclusivity.
Yeah. I'm
sorry, I cannot, even if I have a ready buyer, cash buy right now, they cannot because they have an exclusivity. So this is the thing we bring, so they don't have any risks actually. And if we deliver everything we promised, then it works anyway.
Do you have any range of commission which is being charged in Lisbon versus maybe also rural areas? I know that from different countries where rural areas you pay sometimes up to 10%, and in the urban areas you go up to maybe like 3%. How does the commission system, how is it more or less?
In general, we charge the general commission in Portugal, which is 5%.
Okay.
But of course, there are some projects, as you said, in rural areas, big land, really hard to sell, and even just to go for a visit is a hassle. So just for it to worth it, of course, we ask for more commission. And most of the time, they are actually aware of it and they actually offer it even before we ask.
Okay.
Because those kind of properties is not the properties that you just post and buyer will come. It's about networking. So you actually share the commission with a lot of partners and then it becomes valuable. And if it's very small commission, actually none of the partners are going to work for it.
Since you are a boutique company, and I'm sorry I'm going very directly into those technical things, but I'm just
course.
very interested about those things. Is off-market or are off-market deals here a thing, or is it rather something US American, which is not like a thing here?
No, it totally is.
Okay.
So because there is inventory that people actually don't want to put it on market, sometimes just out of privacy reasons, and sometimes they're just waiting for the right buyer and they're not in a rush. But we know that property is for sale. So with our networking, if we have a ready buyer, we can present it and we sell it. We do those kind of deals a lot. So it's never, for all the companies, I guess, it's never just the properties you see in their websites.
Going a bit back to generally Portugal, Lisbon, maybe also the state of the market. We know that the dynamic, many people are flocking in. A lot of foreign direct investment is pouring into this country and also especially into Lisbon. Give us maybe to the audience an overview about Lisbon itself with respect to real estate, but also maybe also why buying, especially for the audience who has never been to Lisbon and why it might be an attractive destination to buy real estate.
Lisbon market was booming for a long time and is still keep moving. I think it's one of the rare markets. Last year is still increasing with the prices and still moving and still have great investment opportunities. Most of the time in European countries, in many Asian countries as well, when you make a real estate investment, if the rent covers the mortgage, they think is a great investment. So I will be having an apartment for free. But in Lisbon, you can actually have a cash flow as well.
Wow.
So you rent it out, you use a property management service, you deduct your taxes, and you still generate some cash. It's not crazy amount of cash, but it is cash out of nowhere. And we have one of the least mortgage rates in Europe, even though it increased the last year. It is relatively less than many countries. That is why it keeps attracting a lot of investors. This is the investor size. There's also just buyers that want to move to Portugal and live in Portugal because of the life quality. It is the feeling of, I think, everybody I have ever met, every expat. And one of the best part about Portugal is the quality of expats. An online worker who is working through his or her computer from Germany, when these people come to Portugal, and even though they get very, very small salaries, according to those countries, they live like kings and queens in Portugal. Plus the quality of the people, the safety. For the past, I think 50 years now, it's been elected the third safest country in the world. So there is this part, more than 300 sunny days per year. There is that part. Amazing food, amazing quality of life, things to do, restaurants, bars, clubs, nightlife, whatever you can imagine, Portugal has it. So people actually are willing to buy and willing to pay the extra bucks for the property. That is why it's not going down where everywhere else is going down.
I totally can agree with everything you're saying. Absolutely. It's beautiful to walk around the streets in Lisbon, to have the lifestyle across the entire country and the possibility to go to the beach or even to go for a hike close by in Sintra. And this very cosmopolitan and very international people on the street were from all around the world, which is beautiful. Give us an overview of maybe the market prices across Lisbon. And I would be curious to know maybe you have data or also just your opinion in comparison to other capitals across Europe. Maybe you can even, if you have some I don't know, multiples or some comparison, some comparisons in terms of square meter price or whatever, so that we get an idea of how we can categorize Lisbon in terms of prices.
Yeah, I think it's still relatively lower than the big capitals. We can think about London, we can think about Paris. The price per square meter is around like 12, 13,000. And you go to Amsterdam, it's around 8,000. I think the relatively similar price per square meter is Barcelona. It's 5,000. And actually the average price in Lisbon is still lower than 5,000. It's a bit over 4,000 per square meter. But of course, this is just the average. There's also products more than 15,000, 20,000, very specific products. And it's not abnormal to see in new developments 9K, 10K these days. But it's also very possible to find a good opportunity for 3,000, make a little renovation, and you have a great property at the end.
And then you can basically, what's the unit you can compare as well, like renting it out, rental prices. Also, I guess you measure it in square meter prices or potentially also in the quality of the unit. I'm thinking towards like return on investment on a yearly level, or how much is basically your amortization rate over a longer period. What can I expect as an investor to get my money back? Because you said like you're cash flow positive on a yearly level. Give us an idea there.
I would say the average is like 4 to 5% yield, but we happen to find a lot of times more than 6% as well. But I think this is also one of the power of Seed, because we have an in-house property management department that is actually screening and finding the tenants. So we can actually find with our networking of all these nationalities in the company, so we can find the right tenants who is going to pay a bit more. So we can generate a bit more yield than the market.
Interesting. Very good. I'll ask you later exactly about your service offerings of Seed. I'm very, very curious. Let me give you or ask you one question about, or let's actually gear towards the Golden Visa. The Golden Visa has been this scheme for investors from outside Europe without a European citizenship, which basically like allow them to get on residency after a couple of months, years. How has it evolved? Has anything changed during the last couple of years?
First of all, a lot changed in the last couple of years, but also a lot changed 10 minutes before this conversation.
Has it? Okay.
And we were just all team listening to the news, checking all through the internet about the details. So we don't have the very specific one-by-one rules about it.
Yes.
But the news now is Golden Visa is going to be over in Portugal. Totally.
No way.
Everywhere, in every kind of properties.
So that means, okay, so give me, now I need to a little bit more meat on
I
that.
need to do it as well, since it has happened just now. I don't know the specifics either, but apparently they approved this law. And it's not just about Golden Visa. They actually passed a lot of laws about the real estate market.
To the audience and also to update me on it, because I just want to make sure that the audience really understands what we're talking about. What's the minimum requirement? What has been the minimum requirement of the Golden Visa in order to obtain it? And also maybe you can give us some specificities about regional requirements. I know that it is basically like based on municipality. Lisbon has been already stopped. It was stopped a while ago. It was still able, people were still able to obtain it in the Alentejo region or different outside region. Give us still like an overview of, so that people like get an idea of it.
And until last year, for 500K, you could get Golden Visa. And there were some specific rules if it's in the city center of Lisbon, Porto, and if the building is over 30 years old, And if you do a renovation on that building and actually improve the quality of the building, which is going to help to the government as well, so there was a discount. And with these kind of properties, you could get golden visa for 350K.
Okay.
And which is include the renovation budget. So you could get an apartment for 300K and spend 50K for the renovation, and total 350 you could get golden visa. But you were asking the cheapest possible option. And if you are further away from the city center, there's actually a 20% discount. So you can actually get golden visa for 280K.
Okay.
Last year, things changed a bit. In Lisbon, in Porto, and in the waterfront of Portugal, they actually banned golden visa for residential properties. And you could now, until today, you could only get golden visa with only commercial properties
in those areas,
or even like apartments, but with service license. It still counts as commercial properties, but you cannot get a residential apartment and get golden visa in these cities.
Now, when I go across or around Lisbon and I see and I watch the houses in Caixa do Rei, next to the harbor and stuff, and I see a lot of abandoned houses, and people also ask me like, what's going on there? Why are they not renovating those? And why are there no investors? Is it a legal thing? Is it a reason which basically no one can touch? Do you know why that is? Is that something inherited? Is that something which is a gray zone? Do you think it will change, that all those buildings across the harbor, across the city basically, that there will be investors and renovating those? Or do you think we can expect to stay like that for the next couple of years?
Funny that you asked this as well, because that was one of the topics in the changing of the law. So now the government is actually bringing, if you have an abandoned building, you are gonna have to rent it out and you cannot just leave it empty. Once again, I have to address that. It was just the first things that we heard just 5 minutes before this interview. So I don't know the specific, but the government is bringing a solution for this problem. Because before, as you have seen many, many times, we have this problem in Portugal. Most of the time, it's either unrealistic expectations of the owners, think that and they don't need the cash and they just put it in the market with 2 times, 3 times more than it should, and it just stays there. And since they don't need the money, they don't care. Or it's an inherited building with 10, 12, 20 owners that it is impossible to make a deal. So they cannot ever sell.
I assume this is going to be a huge rabbit hole, because there are so many dependencies on it, exactly on this one, because you have to be fair to both parties, to which basically you own it and you can't, for whatever reason. Are they going to just take it away? What is how are going to be?
I assume there's going to be some kind of regulation, because you cannot just say you are going to do it. So there has to be regulations and there has to be fair prices for this. But eventually, I think it will be very beneficial for the people of Portugal.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's gonna even more uplift entire city
because
center.
there are not many products in Portugal right now. That is one of the reasons the rental prices are going up insanely these days. And I think there will be some regulations for these increments as well in this package.
It's a very good thing that you exactly touch upon this point concerning the rental prices. Looking at Lisbon, what do you think there's still opportunities in terms of rental or also selling prices of real estate? Do you think we already hit the top of it? Is there gonna be a crash? Do you think there are some neighborhoods which are still a little bit undervalued, where you should definitely, or where you see maybe some buying opportunities, where there's maybe more inventory or a certain change, be it infrastructure, be it a certain small municipality which changed something? if you now advise a potential investor in Lisbon, or where is there a certain area you're gearing this investor to?
Of course, but it depends, because most of the time we work one by one with each individual investors or buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on that person's needs.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, there are some areas which will be increasing. There are some areas which are already good,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just get you a good yield as soon as you invest.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some areas, if you just wait, it's going to increase a lot. And so when you sell, you are going to make a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
then. So it's about what people want.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to rent it out, I would suggest for now Santos, Estrela, Avenidas Novas, São Bento, Campo de Ourique, these kind of neighborhoods
Mm-hmm.
are very hot these days
Mm-hmm.
because people really would like to live in these places.
Mm-hmm.
Before, because now you cannot obtain a new short-term license in Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
Before, when you were getting it, Baixa, Chiado, Alfama, the touristic center
Yeah.
was very hot,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's not as much. So now people who wants to live here are actually coming, and they prefer not to live in the touristic center.
Yeah.
So it's not as hot as before. And also the city is expanding because Lisbon is a relatively small city and there's a lot of demand. So now the city center is not enough. I would say for a long-term investment, Algés, Alcântara, and on the other side, Marvila, Beato, and it's going to expand. And I personally really like the other side of the river as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to expand to that area too.
Mm-hmm.
There has been some talks about possible projects,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they are going to start moving on with these as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in long term, it's going to be very valuable. I have seen something very similar in Istanbul,
Mm-hmm.
where I grew up. Istanbul is a very similar city to Lisbon, with a river in between, two sides, and like 20, 30 years ago, everybody was living on one side, and the other side was like people were afraid that there will be wolves from the mountains, like they didn't even want to walk towards there.
Mm-hmm.
And now the prices are even more expensive than the European side.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect the same thing is going to be happening here
Mm-hmm.
because it's not very far actually. I have a house in Caparica side, and it's like 15 minutes to come to Lisbon
To
city
Lisbon,
center.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And 15 minutes for me, I used to drive 90 minutes to work and 90 minutes back, 3 hours in traffic per day in Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
And this is me living in the city center
Yeah.
in Istanbul.
Yeah, yeah.
So 15
No,
minutes is
it's-
like,
yeah.
it's
It's
nothing.
nothing, yeah.
It's nothing. So I believe this mindset is going to be happening in people's mind, and the city is going to expand a lot.
Additionally, you have the ferry between Cais and Casillas.
Yeah, it's
And
just
this
7
entire-
minutes.
This is nothing. Exactly.
7 minutes to
Total-
ride to go from Marquês de Pombal to Cais de Sousa. It's going to take longer.
Exactly. I have another question concerning. It is very common here for house buyers to have a mortgage which has a floating interest rate, which is not as common in Germany. And I talked to a couple of people recently, and they said, you know what? There's going to be a situation sooner or later, in a couple of years latest, that a lot of people can't fulfill their mortgage anymore because they all went for flexible interest rates. And it's not like the rich person who got the apartment or the house. It's like someone who's like basically living at the edge. And there's going to be a lot of new supply on the market potentially, which might trigger, not a crash, but maybe a readjustment of the prices in Lisbon. Do you know about basically the ratio of fixed mortgage interest rates on mortgages versus floating, or is that something which you think like it's totally average in comparison also on a global and on a different international level?
I think it's not gonna be as bad as people think because that kind of thing happened already in 2008 crisis. So people actually got their lessons a lot, and the people who are living at the edge actually stayed away from the variable rates. Of course, some people did it because there was a big difference, and most of the time, the people who are using mortgage with the variable rates are the investors.
Okay.
And when they're not going to pay it for 40 years, 30 years, it's not a big problem because it makes much more sense. What they do is, because the cash on cash is going to be much bigger, they tend to not spend their cash. They put a little cash, get a mortgage with a variable rate, renovate an apartment or a building, and then sell. And in the meantime, it's okay to pay the rate. And even if the rate increase incredible amounts, they're just going to pay it months. So it's no big deal or not a big risk.
Okay.
And I personally got a mortgage as well for my house, and I get it fixed.
Okay, so sense. You just mentioned another very interesting thing about the allogement local, the tourist offerings, and you said that's there's no inventory or no even capability or possibility to use new or to buy new real estate and use it for tourist purposes?
Yes. When you make a purchase, even though that apartment has the allogement local license, that license drops and the new owner cannot obtain a new license. So you cannot get a new AL license in Lisbon anymore.
For any type of real estate, be it apartment
there is only one way to get away from it. Sometimes a company holds the apartment with the AL license. If you buy that company, because the registration is on the name of that company, so nothing's changed.
Okay.
So you can still keep it. But most of the time, it's not the case. If it's just an apartment, that's it. You cannot get a new license.
However, it is very interesting. A lot of people also coming back to the golden visa. A lot of people actually used to do the golden visa via the company and not only directly via real estate. So that might be actually also like the amount of real estate being owned by companies is actually not that low because a lot of people used the way of the investment via an I don't know, LLC or a company entity.
I don't know if that is the reason. Most of the time, the tax benefits of the company is better. So even though it's just one apartment and one single owner, they prefer to open a company and buy the property with that company instead of just buying personally.
Maybe you're right.
There is a lot of tax benefits for this.
I think you're right.
And I think that is the reason for that.
Makes total sense. Now coming to seed real estate.
Yep.
Give us an overview what you offer. Also, I mentioned in the beginning your international and digital DNA and your very unique approach to serve your clients.
One of the main idea when we first founded this company with Eden to change how the real estate service works a little bit. I'm sure you have also experienced it since you are in the market a lot. Things has been going in a little bit of old-fashioned. It's a very old market and needs a lot of improvement. And especially in Portugal, people tend to look real estate market as a side hustle, as a part-time job. You see maybe 80% of the agents, they actually doing it on the side. That's why they cannot be as available as full-time agents. That's one of the biggest problems, and that's one of the promises we made to ourselves, that we are not going to do that. We have to be 100% available all the time, and all of our focus should be in this market. Other than that, as I mentioned, the teamwork is very important for us. The real estate agents work individually most of the times. Even though they are under a huge roof of a big brand, they actually work all alone. And we created a system, a structure that makes all of our agents work together. So even when we bring a property, we make sure all the agents have a team visit to that property. know the property as their own, share the property in their social media, in their networking as their own, and everybody tries to sell the property all together. So actually, all the seed agents create like one big mega super agent together, and they they work as one.
Okay. Yeah.
And on top of that, since I was a director and all of my talent comes from the visual parts and the visual arts, so we base our marketing strategy a lot to video making, and not just video making. And since I was director of commercials, so it always has the commercial aesthetics as well, even though it is the to renovate, almost demolished, in far, far away property, we make sure even that property is going to be filmed, edited with professional setup, has professional photography, and presented as good as possible. And on top of that, we created a studio inside the company to provide these kind of services. And this studio is not only helping for the agents to shoot their properties, but also creating contents for the company, plus for every agent's individual social media as well. Because we want them to grow with us. That was our promise in the beginning. That is what we are delivering to them as well these days. So when they get bigger, we will get bigger, and we will all get bigger all together as a big family.
That's a very beautiful approach. And I believe that especially like for the younger agents, you're definitely one employer people want to work for because you understand the power of the visuals and of social media. While, I don't know many real estate brokerages from inside, but I believe sometimes it is a bit, this what you mentioned in the beginning, old-fashioned styles, like now we don't want to ruin our brand by trying new things, by even maybe breaking our systems and stuff. Do you think it is exactly this sort of differentiation, not only for you towards the clients, but also to attract good talent and create a very strong team around you, so that basically you're creating a virtuous cycle and you're really like becoming stronger and stronger?
Definitely. That was one of our goals. And some of the times, because it's not just about the quality and how good of a broker they are, it's also about their personalities as well. We had many interviews with many talented agents, not just agents, agency owners, managers, that we had to pass just for realizing it just doesn't fit to this structure. It doesn't mean that they are going to make us win a lot of money. They are amazing people, amazing agents, and can be very valuable. It just doesn't fit. So it's always about the long-term plans.
Yeah, makes sense. Concerning your service offerings, give us an overview what you exactly offer to your clients, and also along the life cycle. You mentioned before that you also go into property management. You have a very interesting network. How can I, from a client perspective, and both seller but also buyer, how can I imagine the services you are offering to your clients?
Okay, it's good that you mentioned our services. We have to divide buyer and seller, and also the third part is the property management part that I will come after. If we start from the sellers, which are the actual product owners. As I mentioned before, we offer two services, standard and premium. And no matter what, we have the power of Seed Studio behind all the marketing and all the visuals. And on top of that, we always use a market study, and not just one market study, but all the market study tools available in Portugal. And when we talk to an owner, we have the power and we want them to feel that power. We know the market, we know our job, we are the right professionals to do this business and this transaction. And we have to show it to them. And when they actually feel that power, they become much more relaxed with the idea of working with a real estate agency. Because before that, people think, oh, 5% commission, it's a lot. If I just sell it myself, I can just save it. But most of the time, when you work with the right professional, actually, with a good negotiation, that agent is going to make you win much, much, much more than 5%. Most of the time, with a private owner, investors negotiate around 20%. That is the average. So when you try to save 5%, you actually lose much more.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, many people doesn't have the time of the screening process, talk to everybody, arrange visits. And there is also the risk of this guy is the owner. This guy is going to tell me anything that I want to hear to sell his or her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this suspicion as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially foreign investors.
Mm-hmm.
They actually try to get away from the private sellers.
Mm-hmm.
They want the right professional, make the right assessment,
Yeah.
and move on with the deal process for that. So our job is actually a bit educating the owner as well.
Mm-hmm.
That is the right way to work with a real estate agency.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always us. Sometimes there are specific properties we don't feel we are the right fit. We actually address them because when we bring a property, we are 110% focused on that property.
Mm-hmm.
If we cannot deliver that, we actually say no. Or sometimes the seller might have unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
They spent the last 40 years in that apartment. They have amazing memories. They saw their first child's first steps in that living room. So there is a lot of sentimental value that they want to add into the price. But that doesn't mean anything for the investor. So that's why then the market study jumps in. We need to explain it has to be like this. And we will try to get the best possible value, of course. This is our job.
Yeah.
But until a certain level. So that's why we try to make them understand. And most of the time, they are logical people. When you come with the data from 5 different sources and show them the data, it becomes very obvious. It's not my thinking. It's not my imagination. It's not how I think this should work or how you think it should work. It's the market is telling us. None of us are telling the price.
Totally. Makes total sense. And when you go to the business of property management, then in the end, it's the client. So it's very interesting because first you have you put a bit the glasses on of the seller and say, okay, I'm going to allow you to get the value for your property according to the software which you're using or the market value, the appraisal. And then you basically potentially also create this product, this service, and go to present it to clients. Say, you know what, we don't only have the product itself, but we also can take over and do your property management. Give us an overview of this service.
Okay, that service is also actually a valid point why people should sell with seed. It's not about just the buy. It's obvious it's very beneficial for buying, but it also gives a lot of power for us to attract buyers. It becomes very valuable for sellers. And one of the biggest pluses about Seed is also the agents from 13 different nationalities. So we have crazy amount of network. And as I mentioned, they all work together. So when we put the apartment in the market, it's not just putting on the portals in Portugal. It also hits at the same time 13 different nations at the same time, and all those networkings and the networkings of those networkings. And we are very open to share as long as we believe in the quality of the sharing partner. Because sometimes if they cannot reach to a certain quality of service, because we can be as good as them in those kind of situations.
Yep.
So we make sure about those screenings as well and make sure the transactions will go smoothly.
Yeah. Do you think sometimes you have some in the selling process, what do you think are the biggest challenges there? Be it legal, be it permissions, be it making the appraisal correctly, being maybe even people management to also become or being empathetic to maybe the seller. Sometimes there's an emotion involved. What do you think is the biggest challenge on a daily basis where maybe you see a pattern, or maybe you even say it's so diverse, every case is different, and you cannot even like answer this question in a generalistic way?
It is like that. Every case is different, but no matter what, there is one constant. I think there is a lot of bureaucratic issues to get, or if there is not any bureaucratic issues in any deal, it is a bit hard and time consuming to deal with that issue. And that is the part actually our partners jump in. When we created the company, we always wanted to have an A to Z service. So any profession that you might need during the process of buying real estate, we have created a wallet of professionals that you might need with our trustful partners that can be as efficient as our service. So after our screening process, we have accountants, lawyers, architects, engineers, mortgage brokers, bank managers, whoever you might need, interior designers, that we have partners and we can direct them directly to our clients. And on top of that, after the purchasing process, since we have a lot of international investors and they are not even here, so we have an in-house property management department as well to manage their apartments and find the perfect tenants, attend to condominium meetings, if there's any problem, fixing those problems, cleaning services, if it's a short-term rental, check-ins, check-outs, and using all the portals, international portals, and basically generate the best rentability for investors, and they just get their money at the end of the month.
Concerning the international or the buyer spectrum in general and the portfolio, obviously I have understood that most of your buyers are coming from abroad. Is it 80-20 of your clients versus Portuguese, or is it 50-50? Or is it even like only 40? Because still you have like the biggest chunk of Portuguese people, and even 40 is a lot. Well, how can I get an idea
as buyers? I would say more than 80%.
More than 80?
Yeah, as buyers, yes. As owners, of course, we are selling Portuguese properties, so there are more Portuguese owners, but buyers, most of them are international.
And buyers geographically, where are they coming from mostly? Or is it quite evenly distributed across geos?
Yes, since we have many nationalities and many networking, so it's distributed a lot. And we have a lot of Israeli buyers, Turkish buyers, French buyers, British, German, and Brazilian, of course. But if you talk about the general real estate market, the biggest investors in Portugal now are the French.
Any specific split of the geos where they're coming from, the investors?
In the Portuguese market, yes, the bigger portion are the French investors. And after that, the Brazilians and British coming. And in the last year, there's a big boom from the US investors. And on a totally different portion of the market, of course, outside of Europe, in Asia and the Middle East, there's a big group who is investing for Golden Visa and a European passport. And we have a lot of investors, not just for Golden Visa, but also just because of me probably, discovered Portugal in Turkey. And also a lot of developers who are purely investing to make money from Israel.
Okay, interesting. Has anyone ever bought blindly, like online?
Of course,
really?
a lot of times. We do that a lot.
How does that work? Do they send you a power of attorney so that you can do the legal? Because I believe like there's nothing like digital signatures are not approved by the government.
Yeah, exactly. The actual signature part has to be done with a power of attorney. But until that moment, it's just based on the client's trust on us. And so we eliminate the properties first, and we see the property for ourselves. After that, we do a video visit, and we provide all the legal documents. We give the contacts of our trustful lawyers, so they check all the documentation as well and make sure there are no legal issues. And And it's not just that. We took an extra step in this kind of stuff and in any kind of purchasing, actually. We try to talk every single neighbor in the building before our clients actually buy a property. Because most of the time, especially if it's not our property and we don't have all the information, we don't have the direct contact to the owner, we want to make sure that we have the inside information. And sometimes you get the really crazy news from the neighbor. And that is actually can become a no-go property just because of that. So we make sure that there's absolutely no problem with the property.
Is there any software tool which augments your service and the transparency towards the investor? Let's say I'm thinking, I don't know, 3D visits. You just mentioned the video visits. Is that already enough? Sometimes I'm asking because sometimes we are so focused on like the new tools and this will take over and et cetera, et cetera. My question is, how do you basically, or what is the footage and maybe the information which those investors who buy blindly regard as sufficient so that they have a full picture of it and they feel, okay, I know exactly, I have conducted my due diligence and I know exactly what I'm going for.
As you mentioned, honesty is a very big part of our service. And we have 3 main keywords actually in our slogan. It's honest, interactive, different. And honesty is the first one. So it is also about time is very important for us. So we don't want to lose time. And when we shoot a property, we make sure we actually make every single angle possible. We don't hide the negative. We find the solutions for negatives because sometimes there are negatives for properties, but it's not the end of the road. So we try to find the solutions. But what we don't want to do is, if there is a dump yard in front of the property, we show it as well. We don't want to go to a visit and then see the dump yard and then, why the hell we came to this visit? If I knew this was here, I would never come. And right there, I lost 1 hour, the owner lost 1 hour, and the buyer lost 1 hour.
Yeah, and even credibility and your reputation.
Exactly. So we don't do that. We don't hide anything. Everything is very transparent. So most of the time, when we schedule a visit, it's like a couple of visits, and the buyer actually buys one of those. Because until then, we have examined and studied and also do the market study, how much we can rent it for. We have a special Excel that we created to do all the calculations about the investment that deducts all the taxes, all the money you have to pay, and then the net amount that you are going to take actually at the end of the year. So to see that number actually changes a lot. And we try to do it in the beginning because people are not aware the taxes, people are not aware about the legal cost, about the management services they are going to need. They don't know the constructions can take a lot of time. So we might need to calculate a bit more for the renovation budget. And when you calculate all, sometimes some properties, even though it looks very good, the numbers tell you, no, it's not.
Because you cannot rent it out for a couple of months because of the how much is the transaction fee? Everything summed up together, which in a percentage, which I can basically assume.
It varies.
Okay,
if it's your first property, if you are going to live it, if you are going to rent it, and also it depends on the price of the property.
Okay.
And we have it all in our calculations, and that's why each time we talk to a client, we do individual strategies tailored to that specific person's need.
And taxes on the property price. Is that fixed, or is that something which you have to pay, like, I don't know, 10 to 20% or 5% on purchase time?
The percentage is fixed.
Yeah.
But again, it depends on where in Portugal, if it's in the mainland, if it's in the island, or it depends on if you are going to be living in it, or if you are going to be renting out and making money out of it.
Makes sense.
And it depends on the actual transaction value.
Okay, makes sense.
And after that, there's also a yearly property tax that depends on the municipality. Again, a certain percentage for each single municipality.
Okay, makes total sense. Perfect. Thank you so much for the clarification. Transferring the money, where does the money go to? If I'm somewhere in Shanghai or someone in Shanghai and I'm have this amazing broker called Seed Invest, do I still where am I going to transfer the money to? To you, to a Citibank, and then we have maybe a certain institution which serves in order to I forgot the name of this institution, which basically like serves as an ombudsman or as an institution in between until the money gets released.
The thing is, when you buy a property in Portugal, that money has to be transferred from a Portuguese bank account. So that's one of the getting ready part for the buyers that we actually strongly suggest before we even start to look for properties. There are certain things you need to do before. First of all, you need to get a Portuguese tax number.
Yeah.
And as last week, actually, as a company, we can provide this service in-house. So we don't need to send our clients to a lawyer or accountant for a fraction of a price. We actually do it in-house and with the safety of our company. So when they get their tax number, they need to open a Portuguese bank account for themselves. So basically, in the end, they just transfer their money abroad to their own account in Portugal.
And you can do both remotely? Like they don't need to come to Portugal in order to...
No. With our partners, we have partners in banks, and those managers are dealing the process. Of course, they need to provide some documents about the source of this money.
Okay.
Especially if it's a country outside of EU, they will ask, where did you get that money? And you say, I sold this apartment, this property, and I have been working in this job for this many years. And
Makes
these
sense.
are the documents.
But getting the tax number and opening the bank account, I don't need to fly to Lisbon.
No, you don't need to. What you need to do is banks need a real signature. So it might take a lot of time for them to send the contract to your country. Maybe it takes a couple of weeks. You sign it, you post it back, and it takes a couple of weeks. And maybe in 1 month, you actually open your bank account.
That makes sense. Once I am really committed to buying the real estate, be it here or remotely, is there down payment which basically allows me to reserve it? So, sorry, go ahead.
There is a couple of periods. This, you can have it or not. First period is that you can have a reservation contract. Usually you give 5,000 to 10,000 euros just to reserve the property. A simple one-page contract to take the property out of market. And in the meantime, if you need to visit, if you need to check the documents, and everything checks out, then you sign a promissory contract, which is called CPCV in Portugal. And in CPCV, in general, you pay about 20%, which is a much more binding contract than the reservation contract. And eventually, at the deed, you pay the rest.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. In other countries, if I then bail after either the first one or even, I think the second one after the promissory contract, I really lose the money. Is that the same one? Is this the same?
It depends. You can keep changing clauses in the contracts as well. And most of the time, you can actually put a clause and not even just lose the money, actually pay the double. You can put that contract if you just want to make sure, and everybody is just sure about the deal is going to go on, and there's nothing to hide, nothing to be scared of. So they can just sign it as well.
Perfect. Okay. Regarding your service offerings, so you just mentioned like so many, basically like a lot of your entire portfolio. Is there anything else which we haven't talked about, which you would like to mention regarding your service offerings?
For example, it's not very common in Portugal to offer open house events for sellers. There are open house events, but it's not like the US mindset open houses. And we tend to do that a lot for our exclusive sellers, and which actually creates a big success, because when we have exclusivity, it doesn't mean that we actually preserve that apartment to ourselves. We actually share with all the agencies in Portugal. And so we are just much more comfortable to share because we have the exclusivity. So in those events, we try to bring all the other agencies as well, and all the buyers we know, and all the networking that are already in the country. And we try to make things a bit more fun. That is one of the reasons that we have actually moved to this office, because we didn't want to be stuck in a small office and do an office job.
Yeah.
We believe in networking a lot, and that's why we created seed events as well.
Yeah.
So now every month we are doing some events, and we are trying to get away the boring presentation mindset of events and actually turn real party-like fun events with the benefit of winning a lot of money, with the benefit of networking a lot, with the benefit of getting to know each other
and having fun.
And having fun on the side.
That's nice. Yeah.
So the next event will be coming in a couple of weeks. The last event we actually met in the last one. I hope you had fun.
I did, yeah. It was really nice. It was really good to get an idea of like how you work, but also in a very subtle way. Really liked the idea that you didn't have a sales pitch and made the joke about like, okay, we're going to start now with a 1-hour presentation about a company.
This is usually what happens in the events. That was the first thing, that we will never ever do that. Yeah. We will just have fun, do the networking anyway, and when we keep doing it, the business is going to come anyway.
Yeah. You know, I really enjoyed our talk until now. I really learned a lot of things.
You don't enjoy anymore until now?
I'm about to wrap up, actually. And Sam, I really want to express my appreciation towards or about the conversation we have had. I learned a lot of things about, first, your journey from film and advertisement with all your brands, how you got to know your business partner, the quick story about the beach, how actually leads are being generated, and there's actually even people having this profession, and then starting and jumping. And also, I feel like your entire approach is breaking certain rules a bit, with also what you just mentioned with Seed, with the events, and also the idea of saying, you know, this old industry or this old previous brokerage didn't allow us to even go for virtual assistants or any kind of assistance. So let's start and let's do it on our own. You also talked so nicely about Portugal, about Lisbon. You also gave us very good technical insights, and I'm really appreciative about the fact that you could answer all my questions, which I basically threw to you. I hope the audience really also got a nice idea about the beauty about Lisbon, about Portugal, and why invest, and also about the services you're offering along, be it the open house, you say, or even managing in a very open way and very transparent way people from abroad who have never been to maybe even Portugal. So I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate that you allowed me to conduct a podcast here. Is there anything from your side which you would like to mention, which we haven't touched upon?
No, first of all, just thank you for having me in your podcast. And it was a great pleasure to talk to you. I didn't even realize how long we have been talking, actually. It was really, really fun. I really like this saying in real estate. Maybe we can close it with this. The best time to buy real estate is yesterday, but today is not that late.
I like that. Thank you so much for the closing words. I really appreciate it, and we see each other soon, and we stay in contact. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.